We're about ready to get going. Just one quick announcement. With the council's indulgence, November 5th is going to, we have an election coming up. And if it's okay with the rest of council, maybe we should postpone the formal meeting of that day because it's election day and have the formal meeting, the following week, if that would be okay with everybody, just to allow everybody the opportunity for process. Spoke to the city clerk about that, okay?
If that is the will of the council, we will prepare a resolution for you to pass at one of your October meetings.
Right.
Notifying the public.
Okay, that would be great, and that way we'd also open it up for discussion with the rest of council, for their input. Mr. Hanson, sir.
For clarification, Mayor, you still want an informal session, or you want to cancel the day?
Yeah, what do you,
Cancel the
yeah,
day.
I think cancel it today. We got to
All
respect
right,
election day.
just to clarify, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, that would be
Appreciate it.
great. Thank you for your indulgence. Okay, we got some good stuff here, Mr. Manager, if we
We
can.
do, Mayor and members of council. Yesterday I had the occasion with senior staff to tour the new sports center. It is amazing, and so we thought we'd share that with you today, all the good things that are working. We really have three briefers that are going to present that today. First, Rick Martinek from our Public Works Department. He is our project engineer for this project. And then we're going to have Nancy Hellman, the Director of Sports Marketing, to tell you about how the nation is grabbing a hold of this and the new business that will be generated. And finally, we're going to have Ray Ben from our Communications Department bring you a marketing surprise. So, Rick, would you please lead out and jump on this? Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of council, Mr. Hanson, it is a pleasure for me to stand in front of you today to give you this presentation on our Sports Center project. My name is Rick Martinek. I'm the project engineer with Public Works Facilities Design and Construction Division overseeing this project. I'll give you a little timeline of where we started and where we're going. We started clearing the lots in August of last year, so about a year ago from now. Took us about 2 to 3 months to get all the woods down, get a lot of the pavement torn up from the old convention center parking lots that we took. And finally, October last year, we started the building construction and the parking lot construction. Good news is we are planning on having a section of the new parking lot open by Labor Day weekend. We're shooting to turn it over to the convention center probably Thursday or Friday, just before Labor Day weekend, which then pretty much puts us on course to complete the construction of the building, or continue construction of the building, and complete construction of the building October 2020 timeframe with a have them open for business by the end of 2020, hopefully November 2020. To give you an idea of where we started and how far we've come, this was what the site looked like on August of 2018, a year ago. Top slide, you can see the parking lot of the convention center. And then you can see just off to the upper right hand of that slide, which would be towards the west, is all the woods that bordered the parking lot. And then on the bottom picture, you can see a new 285,000 square foot sports center has appeared on site, and all the trees have been taken out, and the new parking lot is being finished. As I said, the new parking lot, or portion of the new parking lot, is estimated to be completed here in about another week and a half. When we started the project, we took about 854 spaces from the convention center, so they lost 854 spaces. We're shooting on giving them back at least 800 of them, so it almost makes our parking whole again. Now we have to keep a section of the parking lot that hasn't been completed, which is just to the west of the building, which would be, does this have a pointer on it?
There's one over here.
Old school point, yeah.
This one?
Yep, manual.
Don't pull on the rubber thing, pull on the metal thing, keep hold.
Yeah, it's our manual version. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
see,
pull-
longer everything.
Failure.
All right. So,
Give me that.
help me out a little bit.
Give me that, engineer. There you go,
Oh,
boss.
all that old school pointer.
Yeah, I told you it was old school, manual.
I think
It looks like the antenna from an old car. this area of the parking lot we have to keep for laydown, but everything from this area west, we'll turn over to the convention center. When the parking lot is complete, the convention center campus, what we're referring to it as, will have about 250 more spaces than what they started with. This is the 17th Street elevation for the building. We're standing on the southeast corner of the building, which is at the corner of Jefferson and 17th Street, and we're looking west along Jefferson, along 17th Street. This is the appearance of the site when the trees get matured, and you can also notice some of the screen walls we're putting around the building. This is to hide areas like the loading dock, the electrical transformer, and a few HVAC package units that are going to be on the ground to serve the courts and the track side of the building. So for the next 4 months, we've got a very busy schedule. In September, all the equipment for the courts will be coming in. That's your basketball nets, that's your volleyball nets, that's your court dividers, and then your stanchions for your scoreboard. I'll explain that a little bit more when we do the flyover for the court section of the building. By October, we are anticipating the building to be watertight, to be fully enclosed, and we'll be constructing the bleachers that will border the track section of the building. In November, we plan on having our temporary power hooked up. Anybody knows building construction knows this is a humongous milestone in building construction. When you get temporary power, you're finally able to do items that are temperature, humidity sensitive. So that's why your track, your court material are going to be following that. So once we get the building condition, the humidity under control, we can start putting wood floors down. We can start putting the track material down without fear of it warping or getting damaged from the heat or the cold. Oh, and then I'll take you on a short fly-through of the. I put together about a 2-minute drone video of the site. So as you can see, all the wall panels are up, and now this is our entry area, and soon to be our plaza when we finish construction. I didn't hear the music. I'm sorry.
I like it.
Oh, thank you. All right, this is the track section of the building. You can see the hydraulic track taking place. The big pit you see there is for the hydraulics of the track to sit in. The track can bank about 12 degrees. So you can see the level of depth of all the hydraulic equipment, the pumps, and the pipes that go in there. This is a shot of the mezzanine area, the second floor. We'll have food service, what we refer to as camping space, which is where athletes can sit and watch the other athletes or just wait for their turn on the track or the basketball courts. This is the court section of the building, about 125,000, 130,000 square feet. It's going to be 12 basketball courts, 24 volleyball courts, also be used for wrestling, cheerleading, futsal, field hockey. It's pretty much in a multi-purpose courts facility. Another flat through of the mezzanine. You can see our metal studs with the walls taking shape, the ductwork in the ceiling, the leading edge so the workers can work close to the edge. See the scissor lift, those are about 45 foot tall scissor lifts that go up into the ceiling there. Fly through the parking lot. This was just taken about 2 weeks ago, I think. I think it was August 8th when we took it. You can see the new parking area, the new BMP for stormwater management right there. Uses a 4-bay system. The water comes in one end, gets filtered, comes through a set of rocks and channels to filter out any sediment, and then goes into your outfall. So you control your sediment and your phosphorus loadings. What'd I do, Howard? Oh, there we go. All right. So I'll take you on a fly through of the courts building real quick. But as we fly through, it's real short. I want you to notice all the steel in the ceiling, and I'll explain something about that here in a minute. So you can see all the steel sitting up in the ceiling that is not part of the roof system. That is because we are suspending all the basketball court, all the basketball nets, all the volleyball nets, all the dividers, and all the scoreboards from the ceiling. So if CVB has an event that's basketball one day and volleyball the next day, or even the same day, with a push of a couple buttons, we can go from volleyball to basketball in 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Whereas if you didn't have something like that, it'd take 2-3 days to load out all basketball nets, to load in all volleyball nets and get it set up. So that's pretty impressive. So all that stuff will be hanging from those steel supports from the roof structure there. And then I'll take you a short little fly through of the track. Again, you can see the where the hydraulics for the hydraulic bank track will sit. And you can picture your straightaway there. Also on the infield of the track, we have a couple sand pits for long jump. And then on the bleachers, we have a couple of platforms for camera stations and also a press box that will be built, and then a jumbotron on the western edge of the building. Some of the colors and finishes that were chosen by the designers and our CVB colleagues. You can see the nice blue interior, the nice blue for the track, a little bit of a soft gray interior, and then more of a darker gray interior, outlining the center lanes there, and then the little area you see off here to your left is your hammer throw. Some of the colors for the courts. The courts will come pre-striped for volleyball and basketball. The black is the basketball, the blue is the volleyball. There's a 2-to-1 ratio of volleyball to basketball, so every one basketball you build, you can have 2 volleyball courts. So therefore, you have the 12 basketball courts to 24 volleyball courts. You make them dissimilar colors, so the officials and the athletes don't get confused of what color they're playing on. So when they use volleyball, they'll be on the blue, and then of course basketball will be on the black. And now I'll turn it over to Nancy, who was with our CVB office, and she can tell you a little bit about the business end.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting us here today to give you a quick update as to what's going on site and in the sales world of bringing business to this great facility. We're really proud, as you can tell, and we're really excited about this sports tourism venue and the impact it's going to have on the country. So year one is already looking really busy. 22 new events have signed letters of intent and committed to hosting events with us in our new facility. That's new to market business, brand new but for business that wouldn't have come if this building hadn't been built. So we're really proud of that. An estimated approximately 41,000 athletes, so that's just a ton of people coming at a great time to fill our hotels and our restaurants and bring economic impact into the city. We also have 24 additional events in development, and we have a variety of events coming in already, from wrestling to gymnastics to futsal to field hockey and basketball and volleyball and everything in between. One of the things we're also really proud of is that the track is sold out year one for tournament activity. That means all weekends are gone with the exception of New Year's Day. We did find out yesterday that one of our clients may be moving to midweek, which would open up a weekend for us to sell. And in our world, we call that a double win. So we'll take that, and I'll keep you posted at our next update as to what that looks like. We have a variety of clients that we're working with, and it's been incredibly well received all over the country, so we're really excited. Eastern Sports Management is our operating partner in the building, and day to day they'll be helping us with the operations of the building and keeping the place running tight and right. They have made their first strategic hire, a general manager for the building. Her name is Amber Giancola, and we're really excited that she's on board. They've really hit the ground running as well as far as the planning goes for this building, because it takes more than just a small team to keep this place going and also to prepare for the opening of this building. We have everything from building operations, and we're working now on all the FF&E and the furnitures and fixtures and internet and technology and ticketing programs and everything that it takes to bring a facility like this to life. And it's really exciting time, and we've had a great partnership with them, and we're looking forward to watching that grow. The development for league play won't take place until closer to the opening of the building, and that's that Monday through Thursday business that we talked about, why it was so important to have an operating partner inside the building to help maintain the activity all week long. And so they'll be working on that closer to when the building gets opened, but they are already working on some of those strategic partnerships now. And right now I'll turn it over to Ray to talk to you about an exciting initiative that we've planned in community engagement.
Greetings, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, and city manager. My name is Ray Pearson Ben, and I have had the pleasure to work with Rick and Nancy as the communications liaison, and that is a job that includes developing and managing the Virginia Beach Sports Center page at vbgov.com. And that's that page right there. I actually go on tour with Rick once a month, and we take a tour and look at the progress, and I make sure to tell the story as to what's happening at the site so that folks who don't have the ability to get down to the site can actually see it happen right before their eyes, because we have a live look with our Nest Cam, we have renderings, we actually have pictures that keep you up to date of the progress. And so I suggest, if you don't have time to get down there, to visit the page and visit the page often. Now, my director, Julie Hill, in communications, lets us know that she wants us to take things that we do and assignments that she gives and innovate those assignments. And so, as a result, I said, okay, in a build situation, you're going to be able to go and look at web pages and see specs and details associated with a build. And instead of just doing that, I thought of what can we do to be different? And so I said to Julie, I have an idea of maybe creating a Q&A, some type of Jeopardy-inspired Q&A. And she liked the idea, so I took the idea to Virginia Beach City Public Schools and Natalie Allen's communication team, and they actually fell in love with the idea too, and she was already excited and looking for an opportunity to partner with the city in the area of communications. So she went to the mathematics leadership within the public schools, and it was Green Run High School who accepted the challenge. And so what we did was provide them with the details and specs for the Virginia Beach Sports Center, and a very brilliant class came up with questions and profound explanations for what they did. And what we're doing is presenting you details and specs, but in a very creative way. So we have a series of Jeopardy-inspired questions for you, and we are debuting them today before you. This went live this afternoon on the page there, and I'd like to debut it here with you. And let's see if you're able to come up with the answer before I reveal it. And let's see if you recognize someone. There's someone in this room who gets to get a little publicity here. Ray Pearson, Ben here with your very latest Virginia Beach Sports Center Q&A. And today's question comes from Shinji. He's a math scholar at Green Run High School.
Thanks, Ms. Ray. The project manager for the construction of the Virginia Beach Sports Center walks about 10,000 steps a day just on site. If he were instead walking around the 200-meter hydraulically banked track inside the soon-to-be completed sports center, how many laps around would he make? A, 29 laps, B, 38 laps, or C, 41 laps?
Project Manager Martinick, this question is for you. Is it A, B, or C? Give him the answer, Shinji.
If you guessed 38 laps, you'd be correct. Here's why. The average human step stride is about 2.5 feet. With that knowledge, we can figure out that he walks about 7,630 meters on site. That would be around 38 complete laps around the track.
Thank you so much for that equation. And we're sending you and your classmates some Virginia Beach Sports Center love as you celebrate your 40th anniversary at Green Run High School. Go Stallions! Good job there. I appreciate that you are clapping, and I hope you are also clapping for those students, because I think they did an outstanding job. That's just one. That's the debut of the questions. There are going to be 9 that are going to live on this page, as well as our YouTube page. And so with this, I think having it be a span of a demographic, we're kind of reaching a lot of people within a demographic to inspire interest and get people excited about what's to come in fall of 2020. Thank you so much.
Well, it's taken an incredible amount of work and a great team to make all this come together. And I'd like to thank the sports marketing team. Danny Tim is here with me today, and Bill Kelly, Ashley Nader, and Kenneth Payne, who are back in the office trying to get it all done. And also the rest of the team at MEB and Clark Nexon and all of our partners that are helping us make this thing happen. And we're happy to open it up if you have any questions.
Mr. Wood.
I apologize, I left all my paperwork on my desk at the office, but I had written down some questions about this. One question I had was, based on the number of visitors, 41,000, as she said, so how many room nights is that? Have you figured that out?
We're working on all of that stuff now because it's not just, that's just athlete numbers that we provided today, and I can provide that to you after we leave here. We have
know
that data
how
back
many
at
of
the
them
office.
are out of town versus local?
Yeah, we've done all that information. I just don't have it with me right now, but I'll provide it with you to Ron and get it out to you guys afterwards.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, Guy.
First, I'd like to say, I've had a tour of the facility actually on site, and the pictures don't do it justice. It's really an overwhelming experience to be around and in the building, and I enjoyed it. I think everyone will. My question is about competition. Can you identify where and what the competition is for a facility like this?
Sure. We did an incredible amount of research on sports tourism facilities around the country, and there are only 2 other municipally owned tracks in the United States. One's in Birmingham and one's in Staten Island, New York, and so we're the third. You typically see these on big Division I college campuses, so it's exciting to have this in our town. As far as competition goes, there's great venues like the one I talked about in Birmingham. There's one outside of Atlanta called Lake Point that's a great facility. Round Rock, Texas has a great facility. Myrtle Beach has a little bit smaller, but we think ours is the biggest and the best. So we're excited to show it to everybody in the country. So there's a handful of them out there, but we're building on 20 years worth of experience and building up a client base, and it's been really very well received on the national circuit. Our sales teams are traveling all year long, promoting this to our national clients, and so it's been really exciting.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Barbara?
I think this must take the championship for a concept that was developed and a delivery in the shortest amount of time. Because this just really came together so quickly. I can't believe that y'all are so far along and you're ready to even let people use the parking lot again. That's just fantastic. And I'm so glad that we had that kind of last-minute suggestion to do that running meet in the way that it's going to be done. I think that's probably added a lot to it, and y'all have just done a great job. The one criticism I've heard is the trees that were taken down. I know our folks have a love for trees, and as do I. So I'll just say, I hope that when we have our results of our study that'll be coming soon, that we'll maybe come up with a way to compensate for those lost trees in some other places. Y'all don't happen to know how many you took down, do you?
That would be.
But anyway, I don't want something like that to mar people's opinion of this facility, which is the first thing a lot of folks say is, boy, that sure took down a lot of trees. But I think sometimes we do have to make decisions like the road project up here at Princess Anne. Folks keep still talking about the trees having to come down, but sometimes that has to happen. But y'all have done a great job, and this is going to be a really tremendous facility, and we'll make up for the trees someplace else.
Thank you. We're really excited. Thank you.
Rosemary?
I drive past this every single day, and it's like the slow motion cameras of watching something come together, and it's been very exciting to watch it being built. And also, those of you that have not toured it, it's one thing to see the outside, but until you go inside this building, it just blows you away of how gigantic it really is. It's very exciting, and it's going to really do a lot. One thing I know about folks, even in times of recession, they'll spend money on their pets and their kids. And so even in a recession, people are still going to come here and bring their kids to participate. And it's going to do a whole lot for tourism in Virginia Beach.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Thank you very much. We're anticipating when this place opens, it's going to be a tremendous boon to our economy, but also really help further define Virginia Beach as the destination people want to come to. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, everybody. So, Mayor, members of council, next we have Chief Ed Brazel. He is, of course, our EMS Department Director, and you received a couple weeks ago, I think, in your Friday package, the annual report, and so took a little bit to get him on that agenda, and so he's here today with his leadership team, so if you'll introduce them, and we'll receive his annual report.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Brought my deputy chief team here, Deputy Chief Tom Green, Joey Hundley. It's my pleasure to be here as your EMS chief and talk about our annual report. We're actually not here to ask you to make any decisions or give us any money, so that's very unusual, but we'd be happy to take money if you want to offer it. But what we want to just talk about today is just how things are going in EMS, a little bit about the report and where we want to go in the future. Today, EMS and our rescue squads, we continue to succeed. We're delivering great care, keeping up with demand. We're busy. Don't get me wrong, we're very busy. We're keeping up the demand, but the medical community is happy, patients are happy, and we're seeing great outcomes. We still have great support from the community. As you know, our rescue squads rely on the lion's share of their operation on community donations. They're still receiving that. We're still receiving great support from government, from you in terms of our budget, ambulance loans, and of course, the biggest part is the folks coming out to do the job. I've got a very dedicated group of career medics and staff and a host of volunteers who continue to come out day and night and staff those ambulances. We're answering more calls than ever, but we are providing the latest of standards of care. So if you compare us around Hampton Roads or even Virginia, we're doing the latest technology and medical protocols. Doesn't matter that we're career or volunteer. We're an integral part of the major operations. When we do talk about something in the water, a rock and roll marathon, those are mass gathering events. There's a risk there in terms of people doing silly things, drinking silly things, or just the heat. And we have a major presence involved in that, including almost 100 volunteers a day during something in the water, 100 volunteers and career staff working. And one of the things that we do behind the scenes is we coordinate all the EMS activity in the city to make sure that we've got one standard in terms of equipment and procedures. So everybody likes to talk about our volunteer numbers. It's always the first question that comes to mind. The top line is our number of qualified volunteers. We have a lot more volunteers out there doing other things, support, dive team, whatnot, but we really like to focus on the qualified on the ambulance. The next line below is those that are active. We usually have about 20% that are on leave for whatever reason. And so you'll see not really growing, maybe a slight downward trend. But when we look back at the highest we ever had in terms of members was in the middle of the Great Recession, as people were looking for more vocational training and had a little more time on their hands, sorry to say. And what we've seen nationally is in times of a good economy, volunteerism drops off. And we've remained relatively stable. I'm pretty excited about that. And then also, when you see our training numbers, the trend is still upward. So we're still bringing them in and keeping up. Kind of the sweet spot is just a little over 500 in terms of qualified is where we feel is a good solid number. So we'd like to get better, but we're doing great. In terms of applications, the top line is the number of applications we received each year, and the next one is number approved. You'll see this big spike there in the middle in 2016. We started a new online system and really pushed it, and lots of people went on and signed up and said, yeah, I'd really like to be a volunteer. But when we started doing the screenings and backgrounds and asking, hey, you have to run duty. It's more than just come out driving fast, talking on the radio. The numbers of interested people dropped off. So we changed our procedures in terms of our initial screening. And while the number of applicants kind of fell back down, you'll see that the quality of the applicants has gone up. So we feel pretty good about the way we're doing the process. And it takes a lot to get a volunteer on the ambulance. So the number, and it cut it off, but it's a little over 1,000 people. We just took a period of time, about 1,000 people signed up. Actually, no, it's more like 1,100 signed up to join the rescue squad. Well, before we even talk to them, we run a DMV check. And a lot of people drive really fast. and have some issues. So we go back, thank you very much for your interest, but only 950 people actually get the phone call from us. We talk to them, we try to get them to come in and get a one-on-one interview. 725 of them come in, then we keep screening them, they go to training, and it works its way down to 161 people qualified. So about 8 qualified people on the ambulance, I'm sorry, 8 applicants to get 1 qualified person. Now, that's not to say we didn't lose a few other people in the stream that are doing other volunteer activities with us, but again, we focus on that person who's staff in the ambulance. It takes 8 people to go online to get one. Yes, sir.
How far back on the DMV check do you guys go?
It's 5 years. 5 years.
5 years?
5 years.
Curious.
And there's certain barriers, things that we absolutely can't take, and others it's points we look at. Okay, so, but that number of volunteers, what we do get puts 12.9 ambulances on the street on average. We see very high cardiac arrest survival rates for sudden cardiac arrest. We're above the national average this year. And again, as I've always said, we're very cost effective. There's, because we're not paying salaries to the 85% of the folks, you can't beat our price anywhere. So where are the calls? Well, first we ran in 2018 a little over 45,000 medical calls, and then the other calls for service, we go out if the fire department gets a report of a possible structure fire, an ambulance is going to help them out and be there for a patient, or any kind of high-risk law enforcement thing. So it really comes out to over 46,000 times we answer calls. The map shows where they're at. They left me a pointer, which is nice, until I break it. The density is to be expected, really, the oceanfront, all the activities there. And along First Colonial Road, you'll see we've got a lot of medical and nursing facilities there. That causes the demand. And on the other areas where there's a lot of density. So pretty obvious what you would expect. We are seeing some more growth in this area. And when we start talking about CIP and things in the future, that's where we're projecting a need for an additional ambulance. The Burton Station facility, which will come online hopefully towards the end of next year, up there on the Diamond Springs corridor, will help with that density area. So when do we have the calls? This is from midnight to midnight, and you can kind of see about 9 o'clock in the morning, people start getting active, people start calling, and then it ramps right up, and we're rocking and rolling until 7, 8 o'clock. It winds down. And that's why we do, different from any other municipal agency in this area, we do put an extra ambulance on the street from 9 to 9. And then you'll also, if we look at our numbers of ambulances, we don't need as many ambulances at 3 in the morning as we do at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So that does, we're very flexible in that regard. The calls, again, I talked about we have 46,000, but that's only half the equation. We're starting to talk now in terms of vehicle responses. So if somebody has chest pain, you're going to get an ambulance and you get a medic zone car. So even though the ambulances responded 48,000 times, because sometimes you had 2 ambulances on call, you really, on top of that, had another 20+ thousand responses of supervisors and medic cars. That doesn't include about 60% of our calls the fire department first responds. So for medical responses, you have over 100,000 vehicles driving up and down the streets, okay? Which is a big thing, and I'm going to show some of the data here where we've got to address some of this. So this is the outcome. About 80% of the time, we take somebody to the hospital. Sometimes there was nobody there or they didn't want to go, but 80% of the time, but of those, the majority are what we call basic life support. They just need kind of advanced first aid type care, EMT level care. ALS is the medications, IVs, heart monitoring. And so this number really supports our model where we do the tiered response where most of our ambulances are BLS. But what this also shows is 10,000 ALS transports. But I just showed you there's 20,000 medic car responses. So we're really sending a lot of resources that could be freed up for other calls, wear and tear on vehicles, wear and tear on people. And so we're really going to be going back this year and working with our 911 partners. Is there a better way to screen these calls and find out what the appropriate package is to send out the door? But again, about 85% of the time we go out, we take somebody to the hospital. We break it down by rescue squad. This, again, no surprise that our biggest squads are Kempsville and Virginia Beach, and also our densest call areas. They're covering about half the calls, and then it goes down from there. But everybody's mutually supporting. As it's the next closest ambulance, wherever it is going to the call. And meanwhile, back at the ranch, we do more than just 911. As I mentioned, special events. You know, this is a big deal for us. We're a resort community, so if there's always something going on down on the boardwalk or Mount Trashmore, and our folks like doing these, but I do have to say that this is above and beyond. Our volunteers, they do their 3-4 duties a month on the ambulance, and this is extra. So by about August, they've had enough extra, and so we're really begging and pleading to get them to come in. And our career staff we do plug in where needed, but the lion's share of the folks at these events driving the carts or the bikes are volunteers. We also have we've got a large training staff, and we do all of the training coordination EMS-wise for the city. So, you know, if the sheriff's department, we just taught them how to do the naloxone, the opioid stuff. We're working with the aquarium on their internal response teams. Because the last thing you want as a city is you've got somebody comes in one color of shirt and another color shirt, and they're doing 2 different standards. We're going to do one set of standards. Everybody's working the same playbook under one. We've got a medical director who works for my department that sets all the policy procedures. So we're training constantly in our facility. Got lifeguards on the beach. Been down to Sandbridge. They're very active down there, and we're still getting great stuff from VBLS at the resort. And I have a volunteer Marine rescue team, which we are our 11th Rescue Squad, which they're out there on patrol every day. But moving forward, of course, you know, recruiting retention, we can talk about that forever. There's no silver bullet. I can't force people to come in and work in the middle of the night for no paycheck. But we're constantly looking at how we bring people in and our retention strategies. This year we started something new that some of you have attended. We every month feature a different rescue squad in sort of an open house, either at their station or at the EMS building. And it's a chance for members of the community, Boy Scout troops, anybody to come and take some classes, see the ambulances, but also then we run a free lunch, free cupcakes, snow cones, what have you, for any volunteer that wants to come in. So if you're free this Saturday from 10 to about 1 at the Virginia Beach office, we're doing our special operations teams, our boat team, tactical medics, that sort of thing. And we're continuing to develop our infrastructure. You know, that's people, equipment, and facilities. And I already mentioned Burton Station, that's coming online. It'll be a big help. And then we're looking even 10, 20 years down the line. But I can't stress enough as we move forward, it's a systems approach. This can't be done without all of our partners and all the other agencies, and we're going to continue that. We've proved it. All the Stop the Bleed training, we did all that for the police officers. And on May 31st, the tourniquets, everybody had the same style tourniquet, and everybody had the same SOP. And so we're going to continue to move. That's, in my mind, non-negotiable. We can't afford to do it differently. And just long term, you know, we are going to have to talk about special events and how we can continue to support those. It's a big drain on staff for planning, big drain on the volunteers and crews, and we're looking for creative ways. We deploy more and more of the ATV-style ambulances, and this one was a big hit. We got this year as I call it a mini ambulance or ATV ambulance. We're looking at another one of those, and really focusing on sustainability of the organization in the future. And so with that, I just can't say enough that we've done a lot of things, and we couldn't have done it without the tremendous support from City Hall, from this team, and from the community. We've done great things, and we're looking for great things ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Wood.
Thanks. First off, kudos on resisting the urge to put Kempsville pictures up there, based on your background. I know that.
I didn't say it, sir.
No, it was tough. The cost of transport, ALS and BLS transport in Norfolk, what is that typically? Because I know it's free here.
Well,
What do you get charged in Norfolk or Portsmouth or Chesapeake for an ALS?
it can run over $300, over $500. Depends on what the treatments are provided in the process.
So it's a significant savings to people in Virginia Beach. Talk a little bit about the physician program that you've got now, because I think that's kind of an interesting thing.
We've had some physicians interested in running with us that maybe they don't have the paramedic card, or they were paramedics a long time ago, and so we've set them up with a few things they need to know, like the emergency driving part, and then they can pull duties as a volunteer on one of the medic cars operating as a medic. They can also be there to advise our folks out there in the field, and so they will be volunteers running as doctors. And we've already got our first one is getting checked off, and he started as a volunteer. And hopefully his wife, who also is a physician, we're about to get her online, we're hoping. But we've got several other people we're looking at. And we also have a fellow, we work with EVMS and Emergency Physician Tidewater, and we're bringing a physician in who will ride with us and doing a research project on ultrasound techniques.
Okay, Rosemary, and then Sabrina. And
A
then
little
Michael.
bit of context of how special it is for our citizens to have this free service. I sold a house in Norfolk. It was an elderly man, and his wife had passed away. And we got ready to go to closing. The ambulance service had put a lien on his home when his wife died.
City was this?
Norfolk. It was in Norfolk. And so that had to be cleared up before we could close on the house. So it's, you don't even think that it goes that far, but that this is a real life thing.
Wow.
Happening.
Now, that could have been a commercial service but yes, it is there.
Well,
Sabrina?
I would just like to say thank you and to your team and to the volunteers who sacrifice and, just are there to serve the community. I've been out to Rescue Station 14, and I've visited some of the other stations as well. And I'm always impressed by the spirit of volunteerism and as well as cooperation. And I just know that makes our community and our city great. And I just appreciate what you do.
Well, thank you.
So thank you.
It's great coming to work when the majority of the people that work for you want to be there for nothing.
Yes.
It's unique.
Okay, Michael, and then Barbara, and then Aaron.
Chief Brazel, I want to thank you for the presentation and for all the work that everyone on you and your team do to support the safety and good health in our community. And I'm new on council, of course, but I had an opportunity recently to do two things that were very special to me. The first was I had the chance to do a ride-along on an ambulance, and I won't go into the details, although I enjoyed talking about it because it was such a wonderful experience for me. But on that ride, I had the chance to spend time with two people. One is a teacher who spends his time in the summers, especially on duty, and the other is a marketing professional who volunteers for time. I think that's very, very special, and it's something that makes our community great, not only in terms of the free ambulance rides, which is unique for our community, but a number that wasn't mentioned that I've learned is that the volunteers save our city approximately, I think it's $26 million approximately, in having a volunteer EMS system. So I think that's worth noting, and I think it's particularly special. But also, I don't want to discount in any way the professionals, the EMS professionals, who are very dedicated and do a very good job and work in concert with volunteers. I was so impressed with how there's really no distinction between the professional people who are being paid and people who aren't being paid, because they're all professionals in what they do, and that was really incredible. And also, it was interesting to me how well EMS, police, and fire work together. It's like a delicate dance that occurs at a scene when they're all there, and they all know exactly what they're supposed to do, and they do it very well. And that was impressive to me as a person who's not around it every day. Finally, I would say that I attended the EMS graduation, and it was just really wonderful to see a group of about 30 or 40 people supported by their families all together to spend time in their community to help make it more safe, and how lucky we are. So it's just a really incredible experience. I think a lot of people have a sense that at least I did, that the people who run EMS, they're sitting around waiting for a call. And the people I spent time with, and I'm told this is unique, they're always working. Every time they leave a call, they're going to another one. It's pretty exhausting, actually, a shift. And it's, anyway, pretty amazing. And I didn't have the opportunity to know about that until I had a chance to learn more and see it more closely. So thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Barbara?
Well, you really have done a lot, and done it well in, furthering this transition from totally volunteer to this hybrid that we have, and it's really seeming to come along. And I know you have a continuous challenge with the southern two stations, And I'm really glad to see that they have such a small percentage of transports, but it's very important that
ma'am.
they are. And I know in attracting the people to staff those two stations, I know it's a continuous challenge, and I appreciate that. And in sharing the professional, I mean, but we've got a real challenge coming up in planning the work on the Hunger Ferry Bridge, which will need to be closed sometimes, and I believe there's going to be a meeting Friday morning. I know we have a policy when there are going to be major closures in the southern part of the city to check with the agricultural use, so we don't close roads in the middle of an agricultural season, but I keep saying on all of them, watch out for the public safety stuff too. But I think they're looking now at rather, instead of closing 10 weekends, maybe closing just a total time in the middle, but I hope y'all are very much keyed in on that.
We will be plugged in on that, yes, ma'am.
And before, even Friday, it might be good for y'all to have some input, because I'm sure people are gonna be asking, how's it gonna work, that we're gonna make sure, particularly Blackwater is covered, because there's trouble getting across the bridge and all that stuff on this side, so that's a challenge. I know an ongoing challenge with those two southern stations, but with this issue coming up.
We'll definitely be involved.
On that.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Aaron?
Hey, just wanted to say thank you, man. To you and your staff as well. You guys, you know, your professionalism always exceeds you as well. But for me, it's just always been a pleasure being around you guys. You guys are easy to talk to, work with as well, and I think that showed and went above and beyond all expectations. And as you saw as well, with something awarded last year, and then just in the community as well, whether or not, you know, you guys show up, bring the ambulance out at community events as well, that matters. And just your spirit and the way you guys carry yourself goes a very long way, so I really appreciate it.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, John?
First of all, thanks for all that you do. But I know we talked about this the last time I got your report last year. You do an outstanding job on survival rates on heart attacks. I don't think people, if you go and look just how well we really do with that. But what is the next step in trying to advance our survival rates? Is that a technology issue within the medical community innovation? Is it education for the public? But how do we, as our population is significantly aging, this is going to be a bigger stress factor. So what's our next strategy, education, investment, whatever, to continue to up our survival rate?
It's going to be early recognition and citizen CPR. I mean, I'd love to say I'm going to put a medic on every street corner, but the CPR and early defibrillation, that saves lives. And I omitted from my report that Norfolk just put AEDs on 30 some odd police cars. Well, we did that in 2004. So, you know, we keep pushing that immediate care out there as fast as we can, and then back it up with the definitive, with the medics. But it's really the community education, community CPR is the survival piece.
Because I've noticed lots of churches have them now. I pay attention to that. Some movie theaters, but not many businesses.
No, sir.
Maybe that's something we could work on, because I do know that is preventing that is big. What you do, and your survival rates are fantastic.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, Jess?
I just had a question to follow up to John and what you said about citizens administering CPR. The app we launched.
The
Do you
Pulse
have
Point.
any? Yeah, thank you. I couldn't remember what it was called. How's that?
We've had the Pulse Point. It goes off anytime there's a cardiac arrest in a public place. We've actually had one confirmed where someone actually was in a store and the Pulse Point went off and they went and assisted, and that person did survive. You know, we've had a number of activations. It's just a function of are there people nearby when it happens. But I know for sure one survivor definitely. So when you put it at it's a $15,000 a year subscription fee.
How long have we had it now?
This will be, we're coming into year 2, and we do push, there's a way there's an app, you see that AED, you can take a picture, upload it into Pulse Point so that lets people know there's an AED there.
Have we had more people signing up to be a part of it? Or?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, that's good news. Thank you.
Anybody else? What a tremendous job you folks do. When you think about the land mass of Virginia Beach and 453,000 people to cover, and you see the ambulances go, they just don't stay in one area. I've seen them from all over, come to Centerville, Kempsville, from all parts of the city. You really have the city covered. Response rates are phenomenal, and your outcomes are just dramatic. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Great job, Chief. Deputies, thank you. Appreciate your work. Our third briefing today is our Regional Broadband Initiative update. And today I'm going to be joined by our Director of Information Technology, Peter Wallace, and Associate City Attorney, Deborah Bryan. And as a lead-in to this, we, the 5 major cities of the South Side, have been working collaboratively since transoceanic cables have landed on the shores of Virginia Beach to take advantage of this newfound initiative coming ashore on our coast. And we have recognized the importance of being a connected community, but more importantly, we've recognized the importance of being a connected region. And so all 17 jurisdictions of the Hampton Roads region, the chief administration officers, we meet monthly. And as part of one of our initiatives is to band together with an initiative to bring broadband and to create an interconnected system, both on the south side as well as the peninsula, to have redundancy in our connection, and then in the fourth phase of a 4-phase program to connect our outlying jurisdictions, our rural jurisdictions, so that we are better able to provide cost-effective bandwidth to our emerging businesses as well as to the underserved neighborhoods. And so we've been working diligently for well over 2 years on this initiative, and Peter's been the lead technologist for all the CIOs. He did an amazing job being able to bring all the CIOs of those cities together to get them to work collaboratively. There was a lot of suspicion that what is Virginia Beach doing, opening the doors to be the leader and the facilitator to bring this together. But quite frankly, it wasn't long before all the administrators here in the region recognized the value of expanding this, both from its interconnectivity from a public safety perspective, but also because of what it might be towards growing our economy here in the region. And we're all very aware of the anemic growth that the Hampton Roads region has had in the wake of the recession. Former council member Ben Davenport was our original liaison, and we asked if Rosemary would step up and be a part of that due to her affiliations with state agencies. So I would turn over to you to finish the introduction, and then we'll let Peter rip.
Well, this is just incredibly exciting, not only what it's going to do for the economy, but also the region. And there's so many people who are saying we need to do more things regionally. Well, this is a big deal, that we can be working with our sister cities together. And I couldn't be more proud of Peter and also Deborah Bryan, the two of them. They have really been the dream team of leading this initiative, and it's going to help our entire region. It's going to, first of all, it's going to save us all money, which I think you'll probably talk about that today. And it's also going to help, our educational institutions and our businesses, and then bring in more jobs and growth, and I think a lot of attention to our area. But what they're talking about today is the governance, and it's a key block to how all of this is going to work. And to get 5 lawyers from 5 different cities is like a miracle in itself. I think Deborah would probably tell you, but they've been able to do that. And anyway, it's a very exciting time for our whole region.
Peter?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Manager, and members of council, well, as staff. I'm here to talk about the regional connectivity ring that we started 2+ years ago. We met several times over the last 2+ years, and the goal was to make us a connected region. We have to compete against each other. We need to be unified in what we bring to the region. So that's where was the goal to start out. We also wanted to bring in the higher ed as well, recognizing that the higher ed also connected by the state, and they have some great amount of research, which also have a lot of bandwidth capacity. So we brought them in, as long as the biomed as well, the biotechs, they're also in. So this has been a great ride for me, to be honest with you, to drive this initiative for the region. We've all got together and decided on a certain specs, which we're going to go into, but it's to build a robust city. For the government side, it's about redundancy. How do we build public safety to make sure that if anything ever happens to a region, how can we back up each other? So the CAD-to-CAD system, all those are very good initiatives from the government aspect of it. From an e-com dev, how do you actually have a middle-mile strategy where you can now have a shovel-ready projects that you can come and start seeing lights being lit up to your area versus waiting sometimes for 3-4 months to make door open. That's where we started out with our initiative. From the education side, there's still a lot of need for unserved and underserved areas. Again, those are issues with the lunch program that they have that we need to start tackling ourselves. From the council, we address all 5 initiatives that we have: stormwater, the recurrent flooding, public safety, transportation, e-com dev, and of course education in schools. So that was the goals as we set out for this. So let me just go to the steering committee was, again, all the 5 CIOs for the south side, and that's where we started now, and we're going to kind of concentrate on that. The first map you see here is the actual ring itself. It's 103 miles of dark fiber, and it's open access. That means it's wide open, anybody could join, and it's dark because we're not going to operate ourselves. That's not the goal here. We're not going to compete against anybody else, no the telecom, no Cox, Verizon, whoever they may be. We're not competing. This is a middle-mile strategy. We've already have in the city a next generation network that we have 60+ facilities connected. That's important to understand because of the post 531, we're able to move 400 people out of building 2 into 20 different locations. We wouldn't have been able to do that if we didn't have a next generation network in place that we can hook up fiber within 5 days. So that's because of their investment that you've made, we've actually saw achieving that goal. So therefore, the city of Virginia Beach already have 126 linear miles of fiber, and I want to talk about the section of the ring that covers the beach. 43 miles, and I have 2 prices on there because there is consideration between using our existing fiber, which we already have, or building new. And those price tag and it's all estimates, by the way. Those price tag can depend on, do we bring strands, fiber to the table, or do we build new ones for redundancy? So that's the purpose of which, once we set up the broadband authority and the RFP, we'll decide which one is better for us. From the city, all the cities are in, and we're looking at these costs here again, our new infrastructure. And the reason why, I'm just kind of go over here, the reason why we see that Chesapeake and Suffolk, frankly, they have no fiber in the ground. So they are starting out from zero. The beach and Norfolk already have fiber in the ground. So the price is somewhat reflective of what you may see there. Portsmouth has already actually started their build out. They were ahead of the curve some years ago, and they're already right now constructing their side of the fiber. So we have a 30% design cost. All the cities got together and we decided to put money together to see how can we get a good base on what we need. The technical specs, the conduits, the strands of fiber, all the stuff that we need to put an RFP together. So we had that design done. It was completed in January 2019. We've been working ever since, along with the Broadband Authority governance side, which Deborah will speak about, to make this happen. So as you can see there, that's the city's contribution to the event. from the 100% design, which is next, we estimated around 800,000. However, again, we want to make sure that we have facilities in place to accommodate whatever may come out of the governance model. So therefore, on the August 8 meeting, we decided, CAO decided, along with the council members, to add some more to the pot just to make sure that we have good operating costs from day one. So that was the initiative there on August 8th. Now, this has always been a phased approach. Mr. Hansen mentioned about the 17 jurisdiction before. So when we met originally 2+ years ago, it was 17. We're just starting with the 5 cities, south side cities. And so that's the map, obviously, of what we're doing right now. And the connection, including TCC and all those businesses. OD is already on board to join us, along with Norfolk State and the rest of them. The second phase is obviously to go to the Peninsula and also tie in Jefferson Labs, William & Mary, and all those colleges as well. So everybody is richly on board. The third phase is we're going to do is connect the actual connection between the South and the Peninsula with the fiber through tunnels, and we're already working with the Department of Transportation, who's said that we can use their existing conduit as well, so that should not be difficult at all. And of course, the last one is phase 4, which we start looking at the Isle of Wight and so on, and those other rural areas. So that's the goal, except that we're starting again in the 5 cities. Now, it's all about the money as far as what do you really get. Now, I used this slide a couple years ago to council, and it's still relevant today, to understand what a million-mile strategy does for what we call wholesale internet price. If you have a business in the Hampton Roads, you can see where we had some comparison, these from the website at the time that we took these. So you can see where, for us in the city, we're paying over $4,000 a month just for a gig dedicated for internet services. Paying a lot more for Verizon for the backup. If you take those same numbers, and if you go to Hamilton County, you pay about less than half of that cost. Why? Because they already have this in place in those areas to make sure that you have a wholesale internet pricing. You're no longer getting a retail pricing. So that's what drives the economy scale down. And that's what again, those are all from the agencies, Fox, Verizon website. So, we're not making that numbers up. But that's what we have in place, and we hope that this would also attract data centers, your biomeds, all of those companies here on site to do business. Ms. Deborah, I don't know if you want to talk about the governance side of the house. I think you're next.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, Mr. Hansen. So Peter has the difficult part of figuring out how to do it. But of course, this all has to be done in a legal way as well. So in order to do that, we've had up to this point, we've had HRPDC has acted as our facilitator. Bob Crum has done a wonderful job being our facilitator through the 5 cities. And as Peter mentioned, we started out with all 17 cities. The goal throughout the phases is to go that route, but in order to get 17, we have to start with 5, and so that's really where we're starting. So to make all of this happen, the cities of Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Chesapeake, Suffolk, and Portsmouth are going to form a regional broadband authority. And we have a vehicle to do that. It's the Virginia Wireless Service Authorities Act. And there are several steps that are specifically pointed out in the statute, and basically we just have to follow them all. So I gave you a little snapshot here, and also in your Friday packet, and we've updated it since then. These are the 3 main documents that are going to form the authority. The first is going to be our Articles of Incorporation, just like any general corporation that you would have. This authority is going to have its own ability to buy and sell property, issue bonds, all of that, independent of each one of the cities. So we'll have the usual formalities such as the name, address, term board powers and all of that. In addition, every one of the 5 cities has to adopt a concurrent resolution. And we've been on the phone numerous times in the past several weeks trying to figure out how all 5 cities are going to do this. And we think we've got it down. So here goes. The name and address, we don't have an exact name of the authority yet. We're going to do a doing business as when we get all of our marketing efforts together. But the initial office will be the HRPDC, which is on Wood Lake Drive in Chesapeake. Again, that's just really to make sure that we set it all up properly. The initial term of the authority is 50 years, and that's per our enabling legislation. The creating jurisdictions, by its nature, it's already a nonprofit, non-stock corporation, so there's nothing that we need to do for that. Our articles of incorporation will also set out joinder and withdrawal. If there's any other cities that would like to become part of the authority, or if there's cities that don't want to be part of the authority anymore. And an important distinction is just because you're not part of the authority does not mean that you cannot get services from the authority. So for instance, if we are the 5 beginning jurisdictions and we end up going to Newport News, where our fiber is, but they don't want to be a member of the authority, they don't have to be a member because all of the assets are going to be owned by the authority and not by any of the individual cities. But that's all set out and how that happens. We will also have to have a board of directors with terms of office. So each of the 5 cities are going to have 1 voting board member and 1 alternate member. And we'll get to that in the next slide as well. Let's see, besides that, we have our purpose, which our purpose is to assist in the provision of qualifying communication services. And as Peter mentioned, this is a middle mile strategy, meaning that we, the authority, is not going to be providing last mile services. We're not going to be a provider of internet service. We're going to be the middle mile. As we call it, anyone can ride the ring and then provide the last mile services. The powers of the authority will be just like the powers of any corporation or of any authority, such as our Virginia Beach Development Authority. And then, of course, there's a dissolution, just in case something happens and a jurisdiction doesn't want to be with the authority anymore. We have ways to do that. The resolution will be effective in all 5 cities, as of now, November 15th. Because it has to be exactly the same in all 5 cities. Yes, sir.
Question on that, this is an important issue which you didn't bring up to start with, because in here it says that after we hold this public hearing, if substantial opposition is heard, I don't know what substantial is, in the judgment of its governing body, any creating locality may, upon petition of 10% of the voters of that creating locality, must petition a circuit court. So our timeline after our public hearing should permit people ample time, if there's substantial, to actually secure those 10% petitions to exercise their authority under the law. And I don't know how that November 15th timeline meets that requirement.
Okay, so we have discussed that amongst the individual cities, and the statute provides for, first of all, that there's a 30-day waiting period between the time you first advertised and the time the public hearing is held. Once the public hearing is held, all 5 cities are going to basically talk to each other, and if any of those 5 cities has, and substantial is going to be a low bar, we are going to change that date, and that's an easy thing to change.
And more importantly, I'm not so interested in the people doing this. I am interested around this table, what we think substantial is, and I don't think the presumption should be, I think this sounds like there's a presumption of pre-decision. When you put a date that can't be executed, it would be better for the public and marketing, if that's something we're interested in, to not specify a date, but to let that say it's subject to whatever we discuss as a body we think is acceptable to give people adequate time. I'm not saying anybody will, but for this to have meaning, it has to have a real meaningful time period for people to act. It can't be like 15 days or 30 days, whatever that is. This has to be a meaningful opportunity for people to act.
Okay, and that's a good reason for us to have this today, because we're not taking any action. So if that is something, when I'm done with the next slide, that you all decide, then we need to talk to the other cities and get that changed, because the date does have to be in the advertisement. So if the advertisement, we can't put a date, we could do something else.
All right, thank you very much.
And we need to address that. The next thing after the Articles of Corporation is the comprehensive agreement, which isn't statutorily necessary, but all 5 cities felt that even though everything is listed in the statute, not everybody's going to read the act or the statute, and so that we should have an agreement, which is also in your packet, which sets out basically restates the act in a way that the public can then see it and see exactly how we're going to go about choosing board members, how we're going to go about coming up with procurement and financial parameters, any of the authority of the board of directors, and how all of that is going to work. So that is all going to be available for public view as well. Again, it's statutory. A lot of this we can't change, but we can at least take comment on. And since this statute and this act has only been used in Virginia, probably I can recall about 8 to 10 times, if that, if there's something that needs to be changed, there could be something that we need to take to Virginia legislation at some point as well. So that is the next document, the comprehensive agreement, that's going to be signed by each of the city managers. And then the third would be a city council resolution, and I'll show you the timeline. The resolution has to state everything within the Articles of a Corporation. So instead of doing a descriptive notice in the newspaper, we are going to publish the actual resolution. It has to have the actual names of all the board of director members, the initial board of director members, and anything else that's statutorily required. So to Mr. Moss's point, the goal was for, so far, 2 cities have already named their staff recommendations, and that would be Suffolk and Norfolk. The rest are doing it as we are, through council actions. The date we hoped to run the public hearing, which we still can do, is September 15th. The only problem is the entire resolution must also be published with it, including the names of each one of the initial board members and the date that this will become effective. So if that date needs to be pushed back, we can certainly do that. Then we would have a public hearing. I'm glad I put the little star next to November 5th, because right before this meeting, the mayor told us that we're going to have the meeting on November 12th, which is fine. I think a lot of the cities may have that issue as well, and then we have an effective date. So this is all for your consideration. Nothing here is already in motion, and basically we're here to discuss it. Mr. Hanson.
John.
If we could, I'd like to get a copy of the statute, and could we get this in
Absolutely.
Word with line numbers next to it, so we could make our comments and track changes, so we could more readily share them with our peers, and maybe easily the cross-reference to the sections? I'm
Yes.
just gonna touch on a few, because I have a number of comments on this.
Okay.
But it was interesting on page, I think it's page 4, it talks about the creating locality shall make contributions. And then when you go back and look on another page, on page 5, it says, members joining the committee will be expected to make communications. Well, expected and shall are not the same thing. So there's some lack of consistency in there, so that needs to be addressed. But it's also unclear, does the board also take a unanimous vote to set what is the expectation that each locality has to pay? It's unclear. It just says shall make an equal contribution, but can they impose a contribution amount on a locality? That's unclear when you read this. That either needs to be say, yes, it is, or declaratory, what's the qualification of some community saying they aren't liable for a cost they're not willing to pay? I don't know, it seems like if you do this, have we subordinated our control over our own finances, and we now have an obligation that someone can impose on us? I just think we need to understand that. Another thing here, it mentioned, not that for the amount of money that could be involved in procurement, that they're not required to have public hearings. They may hold a public hearing, but they're not required to hold a public hearing on their budget. I just can't imagine that our citizens, we had our own issues with the Government Accountability Commission relative to public hearings and the right to people to speak, but I think any governing body exercising authority and adopting a budget which creates liabilities for taxpayers ought to have to listen to the public, come and talk to them. And I think that should be an obligation. Does this group have the power of eminent domain? I haven't seen the statute. So that would be very good to let people know, because that's something they're always concerned about. So I'd be telling that up front. That's a positive thing to say. But there's just a lot of other issues. I know in the past when people have debts, what this happened with us with SIPSA, even though we weren't quote-unquote legally liable, the potential of our proportional share of those SIPSA debts was something that the bond rating agencies took into account. I'd like to have some kind of bond counsel assessment or something as to just if it issued debt, how that would be apportioned and how they would treat that debt, even despite that we're not legally liable, isn't the same thing as we're not assessed as having a liability. That was the issue with SIPSA, if I recall. So those are just a few, but if I can get those two things, I can take my more extensive comments and not take everyone's time. But I do encourage every member around the table to read this. The biggest objection I have, I wouldn't want to ever join anything where it took everybody else's opinion to let me quit. I mean, I just don't know how you do that. I understand there'll be liquidated damages, consequences of that, but to say I can't leave unless everyone agrees, you can even leave the United Nations, But I just think we need to be careful that we understand that this thing has a check valve that you'll never escape from, and that people need to make sure that that's something that it's not our own sovereignty. We're basically delegating our ability of self-determination to everybody else to say it's okay to leave. And I just don't know that that's something we want to say. It's not any other group that I know of that's like that. Even SIPSA, you can leave. It's expensive, but you ought to have the right to bear the expense if you want to.
Thank you, John. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it, thank you.
Debbie, Peter, appreciate it.
All right, at this point, city council comments, anyone?
I do have some, just go to some of the people while I bring mine up.
Anybody?
Go ahead, Barbara. I want to get them on my phone.
Just a comment, I guess we'll be talking about it in part of the session, but yesterday, the Bikes and Trails Advisory Committee met and had presentations from the e-scooter companies, which I appreciated being able to listen to because I found out how it's supposed to operate. And, that's kind of different from the way it's operating. I think maybe everything just got off to a worse start. There were a lot of interesting comments and so forth from the members of that committee, which just told me that there's a lot more to understand about all this than we have been exposed to at this point. It may be, it certainly is working in a lot of places, so that's probably a step that they should have done that they didn't, and that is make more of these presentations before they put everything out on the street. But that was a very interesting meeting yesterday.
Thank you. John?
I'm sure you'll be talking later about the retreat. I just hope that we, maybe before we start or in advance of that, we could get an idea of what are the outcome or actions or decisions we hope to make at the retreat. I would like the retreat to be more actionable in decision-making. Contemplation is always good, but I'd like to, even if we did fewer things, I'd like to do fewer things that we decide and more things to talk about. That's just my own personal view. I sent out to all of you what I thought was capturing all the thoughts and some more thoughts that I had on the bond referendum on flooding, just trying to capture all the thoughts. If people have thoughts or opinions relative that didn't get captured in that long list, if you'll email them to me, I'll keep making a long list. I hope that's one of the items we can talk about the retreat. And maybe that list might provide as a basis for helping us walk down that path, which might be, it's not the right time. But at least we'll know we made a decision. I always like decisions, even if I don't like what they are. At least we made one. I would hope in the future we could get an update on the dome side. I'd like to know, is the church in, is the church out? Where we are with private financing for the private sector group. That thing has just kind of the last thing we got was basically from that January brief. but I'm hearing all sorts of stuff anecdotally within the community. I'm sure many members around this table are as well, but I wouldn't. I know, I just wanted this is making sure it's covered. Also, an update on Rudy Loop, that would be great to know as well. That's a lot of rumbling in the community going on about Rudy Loop. And I'm sure some of you got the email about someone believes we're buying additional land around Oceana. I don't know if this is looking at, once again, just ACU stuff for residential. But if it is, I remember we had a discussion last time about whether rather than go into the free market, maybe looking at the Virginia Beach Housing Development Authority to use that for affordable housing, to look at some ways to use that land in a different way in the past. I hope we haven't lost track of that. I was talking, this gets back to the funding formula. I was talking with 4 school board members at a function on Sunday, and it was amazing how none of those 4 members knew that there was any negotiation going on or revisiting the school funding formula. So I think that's just something that, I don't know how that's all working, but I'm just sharing that with you, and I certainly passed on to them what I had, but certainly maybe that was just a superintendent, the city manager, or mayor, the school board chairman, but just to know that's not a widespread understanding. I'm not saying it was, I'm just telling you they were like Greek to me. I mentioned to you I had asked to be in the legislative package the issue of applying the same aerial restrictions to the future for future races. And then lastly, I want to talk about the vision group. Last Tuesday, when I was here, I mentioned that, hey, the group was looking for direction. And I think I said I'd be looking at a resolution that we might be able to work on because they're looking for our direction, what they want us to do. I admit I missed the retreat and didn't catch the minutes, so I didn't think enough to follow up and ask what it is. My concern, I thought, was one of the flaws of Vision 2040 was that we defaulted as a body to the staff to plan our thoughts. And I think the commission really wants to hear what our thoughts are, and that we can't default to the staff to tell us what our top priorities mean in terms of interpretation. You may recall when the budget was adopted, it alluded to the fact that our top 5 priorities were directly aligned with the 10 goals. We never discussed that. Someone presumptively declared that. I don't think that's true. But my only point is, at the retreat, I would like to discuss that issue if possible, because I'm just trying, if we're gonna go down the route of the last commission, where we are passively look at, and they put together stuff and we say it's disconnected from where we wanna go, that's our fault. But if that's the direction we wanna go in as a staff-led plan, then, I have more productive uses of my time. I wanna be an advocate for this body, not my personal views, but I think it's important at the retreat, we send a strong signal what it is we want to see as the action plan that they execute. That may not be what everybody agrees to here. If that is, I'm fine with that. I'm just telling you, that's what I walked into the commission with. But at the retreat, we certainly can cover that.
Okay,
That's all.
Sabrina.
Can I just respond to that? I know that in talking with Vision 2040, they have, and Deputy City Manager Ron Williams has come out and he's talked to them about our priorities that we had at this retreat. And so that's what we're building the comprehensive plan in terms of changing the trajectory of this commission and this committee, giving them new marching orders. So that information, as I understand, comes from the staff retreat. As a council, we agreed that those priorities were supposed to be there. And so that's what has been communicated to the committee. They're in agreement with it. And we agreed at our last governance meeting that we wanted to move forward in that direction and then have an update at our staff retreat. And so as far as letting the staff tell us how to do it, I think I believe that we're working together with the committee and the council to make sure that we are changing that committee and giving them direction and priorities. If I'm wrong, certainly let me know. But from what I'm, in my conversation with Councilmember Moss, we had a conversation about what were the priorities, what did we want to include in it, and I want to make sure that there's a consensus from the city council that this is a copy of the comprehensive plan briefing that was given to Vision 2040 committee. And I have copies of it here, so if you want to look at it, take a look at it, and if you disagree with it, you know, the time to speak is now, so that we can make sure we're all on the same page when we are addressing them, because they do know what we want them to do. And just want to make sure we're giving them the right information. So,
Thank
would
you.
anyone like a copy?
Thank you. Barbara?
I just have a question. What comprehensive plan are we talking about? I mean, is it the city's comprehensive plan? But that's the planning commission's job. So are we mixing up this group with the planning commission? I mean, the comprehensive plan is built by the planning commission, not one of the group.
That's my point I was trying to make, which I'd like, kind of think we can solve it here today. I think there is a difference of opinion, and differences of opinion are fine. Broad priorities, like flooding, okay, flooding. You got affordable housing, if we add that as a sixth. But what actions do we want them to work on, rather than I don't want the staff telling the council, these are the actions that we want to take. I want to say, take the broad statement, flooding. Well, if we decide, we haven't, if we decide that we want to have a bond referendum in November, this is a great group of people to think about how of building that message. How would you want the ballot to read? How would you want, this would be a great group for that, if that's what we want them to do, rather than saying flooding, and then let the staff decide what those, but there's both routes. I'm not saying one's better than the other, and I'm like, you know, my good colleague here is, just tell us which it is, and I think the commission, and myself included, will do our best, but I think it warrants a more thorough vetting at the retreat, so to make sure that we do the right thing.
Thank you.
Sure, and I definitely, I agree with that, and I think that we're basing it off of those 5 priorities that we took away from the council retreat. And if we don't want the planning department to be a part of it and tell us what to do, fine, then decide what you want to do and tell them, so we can give them some direction.
Right, Barbara.
It's up to state legislation who develops the comprehensive plan. That's
flooding?
done, no, the city's comprehensive plan, isn't that determined by the whole role of the planning commission and what the state mandates for planning and so forth?
They make a recommendation to you, but you ultimately adopt it.
I know, but I mean, the planning commission develops the city's comprehensive plan and recommends it to us, right?
That is correct.
Correct.
And that's the role of the planning commission.
Yes.
So we seem to be mixing things here.
In this presentation, which was a high-level presentation given to the Vision 2040 group, it talked about using them to help facilitate our public input that will be given to the planning commission so that they can move forward and draft. So that was a role that we had envisioned for that, but the council has a different role for that group to help kind of gather that information so that it can be fed to the planning commission, so that they can then provide the recommendation to council. Then we will stand by.
So I just didn't want to step on the toes of the planning commission, because I know they've always kind of jealously guarded their role of being the people who develop the comprehensive plan. So
We're trying our best to divvy up the public input and find more hands on deck, per se, to get people to provide input. And so we need more hands to do that, so we thought this group that has already been in the public would be a good way to continue to provide public input that we can provide to the planning commission and the city council.
the steps would still be that the planning commission develops the comprehensive plan and recommends it to the city council.
Yes, ma'am.
Just so we're
Okay,
not
John.
confusing
One
things.
last item. Many of you may have met or received calls from people on Buchanan Creek, not the Buchanan Creek King Forest, but the Buchanan Creek dredging project. And I don't want to get in a big discussion here. I just want to share the body of material I collected. But the two issues I think looking forward is, what is the process and the criteria that determines when the solicitation process is over? And when people get a notice that it's ended, and that's a definitive correspondence, and then it's extended, what is the process by how all that gets done? Because, you know, we've had this issue with other dredging projects. People think, and I'm not saying that's happened in this case, I'm just sharing you the body of all the correspondence. and all this stuff so you can individually look at it, because I think everything requires homework. You don't want to ask people on the spot to do anything. That's not a good thing. But I ask you to read through this, and at some time, I think there's a lesson learned here for future things is when is final, and when do extensions stop after you say the process is over? Or does council have to be notified to do that? There's a lot of things here that creates the perception that something wrong happened when maybe nothing wrong happened, but when you read it, it's not a very pretty picture when you read through all the stuff. But we can always improve, but I just ask each of you to look at that yourself, and I'm sure when this all comes up, if it gets there, this will be a topic of discussion, and this way you'll be best informed as to what took place. But I am not passing any judgment in this discussion, just providing you the body of stuff along with the staff stuff as to what took place and the people involved. That's one for Guy too. And thank you very much. That's the last item, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Great stuff, John. Thank you for all your thought and input. Anybody else? Just a couple quick notes. With regard to the retreat, I asked Amanda if she would get everybody a list of the discussion questions that you'll have during the interview, so at least you'll know what's going on. And then maybe prior to the retreat, actually before we actually get on site, ahead of time, get a copy of the agenda. That way, if there's any, gaps or any updates or any other things that we can react accordingly.
Who's making up the list?
Yeah. For the
I can ask Mr. Martin to provide a list of questions in advance for the
Yeah, I think that'd
The
be a good.
telephone
Yeah, that's what I'm
interview.
saying. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll have him prior to our interviews, everybody will have a copy of what at least going to be, asked, or, the topic of the discussion. And then once the agenda, based on our input, is developed, that we can, have it ahead of the retreat.
That's a good idea.
If it's not in position, I think we would, if each of us, when we speak with them, could say, these are our top, it's only one day, these are our top 3 things that we would like to look at. That way, Mr. Mayor, when you see that, which I'm sure you would, you can see where the consensus of the most frequently mentioned things, or that might help a little bit, and then other hot button issues. But that probably would help you, I would think, to know if there's some consensus.
Yeah, and then especially with time allocation on what to put into each topic, okay? The other thing is we have a situation, with the Beacon, as you know, we advertise with the Beacon. And I am informed that effective September 1st? September 1st, they're going to start charging, for the thing. Was it $3,000?
For the formal session agenda, they've always provided as a community service, and so they are now no longer. They just emailed me on August the 14th to let me know, as well as Chesapeake, and I understand Norfolk too. So they are now going to charge for that. It would be about a half-page ad, so it would be somewhere around $3,000 a couple times a month. And I understand from the city of Chesapeake, I just actually got an email from Sandy, their city clerk. They are simply going to put a small ad in their clipper to say the date and the time of the meeting, and all the agenda items can be found, and then they'll list the website in their clipper. So it will cut down tremendously on cost. But I'll let Mark chime in on legal requirements.
So let me make sure that we're all of a common understanding about what we're talking about. We have historically, at no charge, published a list of all of the items on your agenda in the Beacon, and that has been at no cost, and that is the ad that we are talking about. There are certain items that come before you that have mandated public hearing requirements, and you have to give notice as prescribed by statute for those public hearings. We have always and will continue to pay for the ads for the public hearings on those items. This is simply a list of all of the agenda items that are going to come before you at your next meeting. There is no legal requirement that you have that ad. You only have to post it on your website at a place like on the message board out here and in the clerk's office. There is no requirement that you publish that in the paper. That has been done as a service to your citizens. It will no longer be free. If you want to do it, In full, it'll probably cost somewhere in the ballpark of $3,000. If you want to publish just something that says this is when the meeting will be, please refer to the website for the agenda items. That'll still be a cost, but it will be less. Or we can simply be more aggressive getting the word out that you need to go to the website if you want to see the agenda package. So we just thought we needed to bring that up to you and get some direction from you because
Well, and
this came on pretty fast.
it did, and in fairness, so the agenda packet is not available in the Beacon, just the brief agenda. So they have to go, anybody has to go to the website to see.
But to see the items, to know to
Items.
go look at the agenda in the packet.
Yeah. Ms. Headley?
I shouldn't even suggest it maybe, but if the publishing date corresponds with the particular week that the Princess Anne Independent News is being produced, it's very likely that he would be willing to publish that agenda in that paper as a service, if we could look at that.
Yeah, John?
My first reaction is to say, no, just not do it. But when you get back and think about, I don't want to say that people have to use the internet to know what the agenda is. However, they can go to a library, the same place the newspaper is, but you got to go there. I realize only about 175,000 households in Southampton Roads, the last time I checked, get the paper. So it is a smaller subset of individuals. But it would be, what I think might be a good way to gauge is to go out and for maybe 2 months do that, but put a notice that we are transitioning to a different way, and here's newspapers that are, here's a library you can use, here's all the sources, so they're being notified that we're not just one day they don't see it, but that we're transitioning off of it. That's one thing. I think we could look at that. It also gives us time to use our survey stuff that we ask people a lot about to ask what people think. Why we do this is, hey, does this really something of value, or does this really work for you better? So we get an idea from the customer that we serve. Do they think, a lot of it, will we get the paper? And that's what they rely upon. They don't always do the internet, but are we losing the ability to be responsible to the people that we work for? And that's, I realize we're getting priced and paid for it, I understand that, but there is a larger issue of being able to reach out to all our members of the community and not say, well, if you can't get to a library or you don't have a smartphone, but you subscribe to the paper, you can't know what the business of your government is. That's what kind of, I'm leaning, as much as it sounds expensive, but relative to a lot of things we spend money on for accountability, it's a relatively small expense. That's just my gut.
Yeah, that's why we're talking about this. We just didn't want to implement a decision without making the council aware of the situation, also to solicit input.
So I will say also, we already have an email listing of anyone that wants to receive the brief agenda. We send that out every single week to anyone that's requested it, and you're supposed to have, you're actually required to request it annually. We don't do that. We keep you on the list until we hear that you don't want to receive the agenda.
Okay.
How do you want us to respond to this? Do you want to ask each of us individually, or you want,
Yeah, I'll tell you, just get input so we can, at least get a little bit of a direction. I tell you what, I think maybe John's idea might have some merit in terms of a transition for a little bit, because people all of a sudden go into the paper and it's not there. That's my concern, and it's coming up. Jim?
Well, I think people that look at it in the newspaper aren't going to look at it online. I think that's a problem. But in the same respect, I think that people who aren't necessarily technologically savvy enough to search it out on VB.gov may in fact have no issue with receiving it as an email, because virtually everybody uses email now. So perhaps kind of a hybrid approach, similar to what John said, where we do a couple of meetings where, because at this point, if we're going to pay for a half-page ad, it's going to be a lot nicer than what's in there now, because they kind of spread it across 2 or 3 pages when you look in the Beacon. And I don't get the physical newspaper anymore, but I get the e-pilot version of it on Sundays, well, every day. But I used to get the Sunday one, but they've taken that away, which is fine. But what I would suggest is maybe since we have the ability to do a more informative ad, since it's gonna take a half page, is that we say, okay, here's the agenda, by the way, we're gonna be transitioning, here are two options. One, go on vbgov.com/whatever, or two, go to this link or email or what have you and sign up to receive the agenda every week. And I think that would do it, but I think it would also be, you know, that you're only gonna see this for another 2 weeks, you're only gonna see this for whatever. And then that way, get it out there, because I really like this idea of the email, because at least that'll get it into people's hands. You know,
And
the
that's
pilot's
free.
making a lot of changes.
Yeah.
I think that's
Now
a
they're
good modification.
doing away with the comments and things like that, so.
Okay, you know, basically, is that, okay, Jess?
I agree with the idea of the email list. I had a question for Amanda. Do you guys send that from like a personal email, or do we have a city server that blasts that out?
It comes from my office. It depends on who's preparing the agenda that week.
The reason I ask is if we're starting to advertise an email list, it could exceed a huge number of people, and then I don't think, unless we have a dedicated server going out, I don't think you could send to a lot of people. Usually much above 250 people, you would need an email service.
We have cloud service
Just
here,
the
that would
brief
be very
agenda.
handleable.
Okay.
And I can't tell you how many exactly we have on the agenda distribution, but it's a lot.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Okay, that's why
Yeah.
I just wanted
We
to know
just
if there
copy
would
and
be
paste
a-
it from an Excel worksheet.
Yeah, I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
only a handful of us can hit all users. And I can hit a button and send out a
Gotcha.
link to 7,000 emails. And quite honestly, there's 14,000 of school and there's all the constitutionals. We're pretty high-powered.
Okay.
Cloud serving, as John said, we're adept at that. And there's other ways that they can facilitate linkage to handle the city, and I think it's a great idea.
Yeah,
And
I
right
agree.
now, we don't send a link, we actually send a PDF, but we could include a link to the EDOCS portion of the city council's webpage that would take them right to the full agenda if they want to research any item that's on the upcoming agenda.
Oh, they would love that.
Is that a fair option to everybody?
So we would pay for an ad for the 2 September meetings with this
Transitional.
notice of the transition and the 2 options.
Right?
And we switch in October, and
And then maybe if we don't get a whole lot on that, then we could do a lot smaller ad that says, if you want the city council agenda, click here, you know, in October, November,
Final
whatever.
last
Could
notice.
probably
Okay.
put like a QR
Okay.
code in.
So everybody, Guy?
If we're done with this, I had one comment.
Okay. All right, so we're okay to move forward, folks? Okay.
Thank
Guy?
you, thank you.
Just briefly, I wanted to remind people listening or watching that the resort area strategic action plan, public hearing will be held this week at the convention center, Thursday night from 6 to 8 p.m. This may be the last public hearing that we have for a while, so I hope everybody will come out and see where we are with that. I think we've made a lot of progress, but we need more public input. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
I would just help Mr. Moss from Mr. Tower. The race app is probably what's generating comment on Rudy Loop. What's in the, being proposed in there by way of a park and public access. I think Mr. Tower and Ms. Wilson are both very engaged in this conversation. But how about I get a draft of that to y'all in Friday's packet, so that it'll help keep you informed.
okay, John?
I can't remember the date, but I think it's this week, but maybe it's next week, Mr. City Manager, the meeting on all the things about development, standards, and as we stormwater and everything, it's over here across the street. Is that this week? Tomorrow? I don't know about the rest of you, but I have received a lot of feedback from people. They're, holding back their positions and thoughts, but I hope that we set a plan that after we get all the feedback from the community, basically the people that build and do things, that before that comes back to us for some kind of vote or whatever, I think it would be good for us to make sure that we have the unabridged comments of all the things that came in from the development community. And it may be worthwhile, and maybe it's just 2 of us or 3, however we work it, to have some sit down so that we know where the real rubs are on economics or whatever those things might be, rather than having to have the first time we hear that is when there's the public hearing of what's being proposed. I don't know how to best structure that. There's probably here smarter than I am about the people in that community. But there needs to be a way for the council as a body to have a healthy but informal and non-committal conversations on those comments from the leadership reps from those communities. I think that will go a long way to, when we finally get to the end, making sure we haven't priced people out of business. We've made sure that, we didn't suspend economics, but at the same time, we didn't create future problems for future taxpayers to pay. But you may have heard similar things. I'm just sharing with you what I heard. And I want to make sure that people watching know that it's open to the general public as well, but it's across the street. Is that 6 o'clock?
No, it's in the morning at,
Oh.
Yes, it's, I think it is 9.
I think it's 9 to 11.
I thought that would be good to announce.
And I've asked that copious note-taking be available, both from the Public Works and the planning side.
9 to 11 tomorrow morning. Building landscape.
And we do recognize, with recurrent flooding and sea level rise, these are different days.
I'm not taking sides. I'm just
No, you're
making
not.
sure all the
Yes,
views
sir.
are heard.
Yes, sir.
Okay, anybody else? Great conversation, folks. Okay, Mr. Vice Mayor, anything on agenda review?
Everybody have a pencil? Okay. One speaker who signed up for 17 items. So the only items that currently do not have a speaker are item 5C and 7C.
Amanda, you must be special.
Amanda special, as is federal pass-through surplus of some sort. Okay, and then under planning, the only items are 4, 5, and 8. So so first off, we'll talk about ordinances resolution. So there's a potential of having item 5C on consent and item 7C on consent. I don't know what the will of council is.
Yes, please.
What, say again?
5C and 7C can be on consent if people want them on consent.
Yes, please.
Well, I'm going to divide the question on 5 anyway, so I don't mind. having
It's
single-
already divided,
I know,
isn't
that's
it?
why I
Yeah,
can
it
consent.
will be
But I'll be
divided.
voting no on 5C on consent.
Okay, is everybody else okay with 5C on consent?
Okay. And then 7C?
And then 7C is 1.104721 federal pass-through surplus. Everybody okay with that?
That was well written.
Okay.
All right, then under planning, we have speaker on K1, 2, and 3, and K6 and 7. So including the ones where the applicants request a withdrawal and applicant has requested indefinite deferral, they're still speakers. So item 4, we'll start with that. David W. and Kimberly Lee, street closure, 1/2 unimproved unnamed alley, 617 South Atlantic Avenue, Beach District. Mr. Tower.
Okay.
Item 5, John E. and Jennifer K. Alex, street closure, 1/2 unimproved unnamed alley, 536 Vanderbilt Avenue. Mr. Tower.
Okay.
K.I. Kennels LLC, Karen Brumley Pool for conditional use permit regarding a commercial kennel, 6444 Knott's Island Road, District 7.
Consent.
So the other ones are, all have speakers.
Just for the groups known, on item 6, I just think that's not ready for an affirmative vote. I hope when we get done, that gets deferred. I think there's a lot of questions we need to ask ourselves about that.
Okay, is that it, Mr. Vice Mayor?
A very quick consent agenda.
Okay, that was a quick one there. Okay, moving forward, the chair will entertain a motion to recess into a closed session pursuant to the exceptions from open meeting allowed by section 2.2, 37A11 Code of Virginia as amended for the following purposes. Legal matters, consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members or consultants pertaining to the actual or probable litigation where such consultation or briefing in an open meeting would adversely affect the negotiation or litigating posture of the public body pursuant to section 2.2, 3711A7 regarding Holloway, Latasha, and Georgia Allen versus City of Virginia Beach et al., and personnel matters, discussion, considerations, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of any public body pursuant to Section 2.2, 3711A1, council appointments, council boards, commissions, committees, authorities, agencies, and appointees, and performance of council appointees. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Ms. Henley?
Aye.
Mr. Moss?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Rouse?
Aye.
Mr. Belushi? Mr. Belushi?
Aye.
Mr. Tower?
Aye.
Ms. Wooten?
Aye.
Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood? Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
11 to 0.
Okay, could I?